Okay, good morning again. So this will be a microscopic examination of 3 slides, part of the Hocus Pocus experiments that are like a series of experiments that is still ongoing, that is aimed to try to prove that the Neros, the robots, that they can transfer energy between each other. Of course, in ways that is outside the boundaries of the physics of humans. Should be said again, of course they can do it. I mean, we know that they can do it because they can transfer mass. I mean, again, some of the audience, or at least the original audience of this video, were transferred from between planets using, this mechanism. So, and again, without even like the assistance of general relativity, if they, some of the body is stored even according to the most primitive definition, some of the body part of the body is stored energy. So yes, they can transfer energy, and some of the listeners are actually transferred that way. And it should also be said that this is not a new issue in this channel. It was discussed since its inception during this January 2023. It's almost a year now, and most probably, as I said, it can be deduced from many of the microscopic the experiments that were documented using microscopy in this channel. But what we want to do now is to make, like, again, the Gangnam Style video. Something that it should be universally, that everybody, all over the world will kind of like. That, without need any requirement to be part of a specific culture or to have any kind of knowledge. So again, I should say that that attempting direction for such a study could have been using separate neuron mixtures. Anyway, what I want to do is to use electricity, most probably DC circles, low voltage or relatively low voltage DC circles that are broken circle, like you see here. You see transformer, and you see that this looks like it looks very much like electrolysis container, but it's two containers, so it's a broken circle. And the idea is to show you to connect a component to this simple DC circle, and to show you that fiat luz, let there be light, vayehi. And maybe the most tempting way to do it is to use actually light. Like light bulbs that are a symbol of electricity, and everybody understand what does it mean, like that that the light bulb is suddenly on. And again, and also I'm like I know I've those that know me know that I have a great affinity to literature, and I like the Canticle for Leibovich novel by Walter Miller. And there's in the middle of the novel, there is a very dramatic scene where a monk that is kind of walking in isolation in a monastery in post-apocalyptic Earth, and he's under scrutiny, both of his friends and the father of the monastery, and also an investigator from Rome. And they are kind of very, they're suspicious, what does he do? Is it witchcraft? Is it Satan's work? Is it and then they see the light, they see light, and they are shocked, and they fall off their feet. And they, so it's tempting to try to, kind of how do they redo it? What's the word? like you do in wars. I use this word a lot, like not reincarnation, what's the name? Reenactment. But I mean, the main problem is that I unfortunately I don't know Latin, and the whole scene is like the dramatic effect of the scene is predicated on the fact that that when they see the light, they start like to chant Latin verses. It happens a lot in the novel. Like it's like 1/5 of the novel is people like chanting Latin things in very dramatic way. It's actually nice. I mean, it's better than it sounds. But so I mean, maybe if I'll kind of like polish my non-existent Latin, I'll commence with the light bulb experiment. But but according to, on a more serious note, even though it was quite serious, from my experiments, as is documented in this channel, electrolysis, even though it's not trivial to explain why. It's not the time now. Watch the old videos. Many of almost all of the not all, but many tremendous amount of the experiments that related to electricity during the last year was done using electrolysis, and it's very complicated to explain why, and it's a huge issue, but I thought maybe it's like that I'll have more success actually with electrolysis. At least this is my first kind of like my first direction. Now, how do you prove that electrolysis actually takes place? So, bubbles. I mean, you see bubbles in the liquid. Should be said that the bubbles are just a byproduct that allow us to know that something happens. I mean, generally, it's not beneficial for the goals of the various experiments that I've done. I mean, mostly actually, it's actually counter-beneficial, because I don't really need this. Arguably, I don't really require the separation of molecules. The bubbles most probably are a result of the fact that some of the mixture is H2O, and it separates to H2O2. Probably it's not very beneficial for the neurons. It's kind of like just it's a way to see that to actually to prove that things are happening. It's from the point of view of the actual experiments that were done in this channel, it's a byproduct, and the same is true for the other two main effects of electrolysis, which is ionization and galvanization, that are both probably not hurtful to the neurons, to the robot, even though they are galvanized and they are ionized. But I don't see how it can help. Ionization might help, for all sorts of purposes, but generally, it's not required at all. Just to say that the issue with electrolysis is electrolysis is kind of like it's not a traditional usage of electrolysis, but again, I'll discuss it. I discussed it a lot in the past, and maybe I'll do a summary of these issues in a technical video that I will do maybe in the future, maybe in the near future. So, the transformer that I used for this experiment is this one. It's called the LED driver. It was disassembled from electronic home appliance that I even don't know what it is, but because I found it in the trash and it was already partially disassembled. But from the scraps, I was able to disassemble this transformer, which is great because it's pretty. The other transformers that I have are very, very weak. Even with a weak transformer, even with 1 voltage, volt, 1 ampere transformer, you can do nice stuff. But for the more complicated stuff, I needed something more stronger, and I'm under arrest here, but I managed to find it in the trash, which is nice because it's a little stronger than usual. and I use it a lot. Now, one of the advantages, one of the things that were, demonstrated a lot in this channel is that there are ways to control the efficacy of the electrolysis, as is demonstrated by the creation of foam. And again, probably a byproduct, but that's the base. It's a byproduct that is correlated with what actually happening, and this is also proven in this channel. And this is important because many times you want to increase efficacy or decrease efficacy. In general, you don't want to create too much heat. We had many issues with heat, and I've used all sorts of ways to cooling the containers. Most probably, the neurons themselves are superconductors, even probably room temperature superconductors. Though this is a matter of definition. I'll not get into it now, but of course the rest of the mixture is not superconductor, and when electrolysis is very effective, the rods are the rods, if they are based on just a wire like that, which was not always the case, but if you use wires, they are evaporating on front of your face incredibly quickly. You see the metal itself evaporate. Of course, you don't have to use wires. You can use actually rods like screws, and this was done in the past also in this channel a lot. But then it's you lose, you increase resistance, and of course you decrease flow or current, and so it's counterproductive. It's a very cumbersome process, electrolysis. But that's what I used in this channel. And as I was starting to say, you can actually control the efficacy using, in general, 3 ways. First, you can change the mixture. I would say that in general, it's, the whole thing of what's in the mixture is of course a huge topic. Even though I would say lesser important than what you might assume. I know it sounds like, to some of you, weird statement, because the intuition is to think what's in the mixture, but mostly what's in the mixture is robots that were originated either directly in my body or are the descendants of such robots that they were multiplied outside my body. The robots is the important thing. The rest of the mixture actually is less of important than what you might assume. And this was proven to be true throughout the work in this channel since the very early days. That you need 4 things, in order to create stuff with the robots, you need 4 things, and one of these things is matter. But actually, matter is probably of the less important. And of course, this is predicated on this on the stage of the research and the circumstances. Maybe in the future or in other circumstances, the equation will change and matter will be the greatest limitation. But out of the 4 things that are needed, matter was proven to be the thing that is easiest. The easiest thing. Even though I'm under arrest and I have no money at all, even under these unbelievably cruel and difficult circumstances, matter was not a big deal. So the 4 things are matter, energy. That's why we use electrolysis and other ways as well, and this is a huge part of what we do in this channel. The third thing is the actual robots. You need the robots, and you need them, of course, bigger ones you need both bigger and smaller ones, and they vary tremendously in size. The smallest ones are probably not only in the nanoscopic level, but perhaps in the sub-nanoscopic level. Yes, it sounds outlandish, but it's not the time to discuss it. The biggest ones are probably, I would say, something between the typical size of a Star Wars Death Star, and the black hole in the middle of a galaxy. But it should be said that even without any kind of, even without the need for any hypothesis, just by what we've watched in this channel, using this basic Bessler 1 microscope, with the available lenses that we had, if you like place the smallest one that we've seen besides the biggest one that we've seen, it will be like placing Chihuahua next to Godzilla. This is an amazing property of the neurons, because mostly we don't know of any living thing, any living thing that that varies so much in like its size factor, but we don't know of any mechanical thing or artificial thing, and not even in fiction. Like even in fiction, usually robots are not described that way, that they vary so much in size. Again, just even by what we've seen with our own eyes. The minimal and the maximal size that were documented in this channel many times are, I would say, something between Chihuahua and Godzilla. Even more than that. Like the difference is even larger, probably. So you need them. So that's why it's so important to multiply them and to grow them outside my body. And that is a lot of what we've seen in this channel. Because there is a limit to how much I can masturbate. That's how I produce it. I'm sorry if I offend the faint of heart or something, but that's the way. And the fourth thing that is needed, again, matter, energy, the actual robots. The fourth is knowledge of the symbolic language, because we need to tell them what we want them to do. I communicate with them not using telepathy. We communicate using a language, and a lot of what I do in this channel is trying to understand the language. This is something that I've actually started even before this channel started. It was started about 2 years ago, and it was documented in the Evernote account, in Facebook a little bit, in my Twitter account, which unfortunately now it's not available now, most of the stuff, and also in this channel, the symbolic language. And again, most of my art, the painting and the sculptures, besides, like the glamour model subgenre of like a beautiful woman with big, voluptuous, as they say. Besides these paintings, everything else is part of the symbolic language. Like it's all related to symbolic language. So it's a huge thing in what I do. And matter was not that big of a deal. Actually, matter was not that big of a deal. And the reasons for that are complicated and should be discussed in separate. Like it was discussed in the past, and maybe I'll discuss it again. This is another topic. But matter is important because you need it for the process of electrolysis in the specific way that I do it with the neurons. And there are all sorts of consideration, but the main consideration, the main conflict, is the fact that are the two factors. First, the neurons, the robots, they are not well preserved in water and are vulnerable to oxygen. Less than typical microbes, but still they die. From the exposure to too much oxygen. And they preserve much better in oil, even hardened oil, like thick oil. But such oils, at least simple oil that I can place my hands on. Again, I'm under arrest all this year and I have no money, so I can only use simple stuff. And such oils are not conductive. There might be some kind of a synthetic oil that is great for the preservance of the neurons and is also very conductive. If such material exists, it will be of a tremendous benefit to me, to my experimentation. But it's certainly, it's not, it's if it exists, it's certain, most probably, my estimation is, I'm almost certainly that if it exists, it's something synthetic. I mean, it's not something that you can buy in a grocery store. That in everything that I have in this room is either I buy it in a grocery store or I find it like in the garbage. So there is a conflict between, I mean, the fact that we want to preserve the neurons, but when we do electrolysis, we want to increase conductivity. Usually, not always. Sometimes we want to decrease conductivity because too much, I mean, current, I mean, is causing heat issues. So this is one of the three ways to control the parameters of the electrolysis, besides, of course, choosing a different transformer. And I don't have, I mean, it's mostly I use this transformer because it's the strongest one that I have, and I don't have many others. I mean, I have this one, which is 5 volt, 3 ampere, and another which is 1 volt, 1 ampere, and that's what I have right now. I've had others, but they are broken. They were broken, but they are not in a usable condition. So one way to control, the parameters is to change the mixture. For example, I'll say right now that what you see here, about half of it was taken from this container, which is the only big container that I have. I've had many others, but I destroyed everything because the Israelis always try to steal it from me and they torture me for that. So I destroyed it in the last months because, I mean, to reduce the incentive to hurt me, to take it from me. But I still have this container. Should be said that a couple of days ago, I took the big magnet that was inside the container out. It was this magnet, and I replenished all. I mean, and so of course the water level, I mean, went down. So I replenished it with pea and oil, my pea and oil. So it's now probably it's much less dense in neurons than what we've seen in the past because so much, I mean, was diluted with pea and oil. And this is one of the slides that we have here. Just, I mean, sample from the container. Most probably, I mean, unless there is some kind of, like, I mean, unfortunate and unexpected events, again, the radiation of the Starship does not hurt these neurons. It's not the same T as yours. What you know is what I call the red T, the red neurons. What you call the T is the red neurons. It's mostly generated inside the female Titan body, the female Venusians. There is the brown T, which is generated inside the male bodies in Venus, and there is the yellow neurons, the yellow robots, or the yellow T, which is generated inside my own body. I am a different kind of creature, a cherub. I do not belong to Venus. I was not born in Venus. I was born in Earth, and I represent another species that is called the cherubs. And they radiate the Earth. They destroy the red neurons. They do not destroy my robots. So it shouldn't like hurt what we see in the Earth. But of course, there are other ways that, I mean, potentially can kill it. Hopefully, it didn't happen. But in any case, it will be diluted because I've added so much pea and oil very recently. But what we have in these cups is actually even more diluted because half of it is just water. H2O from the tap, because I wanted to increase conductivity. And this is the second way another way. This is, like, as I said, the first way to change, like, the parameters of the electrolysis with tweaking the actual mixture. Now there are two other ways that I will use after probably later, almost certainly later today. First is to change the how you wire. I mean, the material of the wires, and also, I mean, it's very technical, like how you actually put the wires inside the liquid. This can change the parameters. So I will also probably do that. And there is another way, which is to use a magnet inside the mixture. And I would say again, I do not know if this is a known technique in electrolysis. I mean, I'll gladly, get any advice on the matter from people that have background with the, not necessarily scientific background, but even more importantly, like engineering or technical kind of like experience, like because electrolysis is a widely known, method in industry. I mean, it's used by not by scientists, but, or just by, it's used like in the industry. So if you have any kind of knowledge of such a thing, I mean, if it's known that magnets are used to increase, or I mean, because it was proven in this channel that, I mean, you can use magnets to greatly increase or decrease, I mean, of course, the efficacy of the electrolysis. And so most probably I'll also use magnets as well to change the parameters. Now, what we already have done yesterday is first of all, I just placed the two rods inside this the left container and switched on, and I actually saw many bubbles, and it was like, I mean, it was verified that, you know, it's a closed circle, and that the mixture is some kind of conductivity, which is as expected. Then I alternatively, took out the neutral and the hot rods. Like one is called hot, one is called neutral. The neutral is the sink, like the sink of the. I know you people in the intelligence communities, you like to use the word sink in a sexual way, but it's just a technical term. And the hot rod is alternatively, you can call it the positive rod. So I took it out, and as expected, you didn't see bubbles, which is to be expected, because it's a broken circle. And after that, what I've done is I placed one rod inside the left glass and the other inside the right glass. And after some time, we started to see small amount of bubbles, much lesser than, of course, when they were both placed inside the same container. But we've seen, and we can actually see it again now, even though just about 20 minutes ago, no more, 40 minutes ago, before this video started, I actually I took a sample. So these were created, the bubbles you see now were created just, mostly in the last 30 minutes while I'm speaking. You do see bubbles. So what we will inspect now, and then just before I started this video, I've taken two samples from this container. One sample was taken, from not near the rod, near the perimeter. And another was, I tried to take sample of the bubbles, and I hopefully I succeeded, but I'm not certain about it. Like from the bubbles that you see just, near the rod, to see if there is to see the difference, if there is a difference. And of course, while I was taking it, all the bubbles they disappeared. So what you see now are actually new bubbles. Now, before we actually inspect the results, let's try to be skeptical about it. Let's try to think, what can explain this, what we see now? First of all, what we see here, according to my experience, is very much, in line of what we can expect of electrolysis in a mixture. Of course, when the rods are in the same mixture, not like that. But when you have low current electrolysis, this is, V equals IR, and presumably V should kept constant, because it's determined by the transformer, if I understand correctly. Even though it might be it might not be completely true, and I try to be skeptic. So I try to be devil's advocate, see what can happen here. Giving you every information that I have. So presumably V stays constant in the end. So what can change the current? Only the resistance. So if the two rods are inside the container, the resistance is just the resistance of the mixture. Now it's actually much more complicated than that, because I just said it in one sentence. Let's not get into it, but I mean, the whole idea of using electrolysis, this research, I mean, just from the beginning, this was predicated on the theory that I didn't prove rigorously, but I mean, just it's working. Like, I mean, it's working, you know. But I mean, all of that was predicated on the idea that the neurons can create chains inside the mixture, and when they create these chains, they actually reduce the resistance significantly. Because they are superconductors. So when they multiply in the mixture, the resistance actually is reduced, and also it's changed when they choose to change it. They are sentient creatures. It's not like brainless microbes. So the mixture actually changes the resistance by the creation of new ones, and also by their own by decision and their own behavior of their behavior. All of that is true in any kind of container. I mean, this is a new thing. That I mean, the split container, like the split circle, is something that I never done in this in the course of this research in the last year, and you cannot see. I mean, it's the first time in this channel that this is seen. What I've said until now is just, I mean, it's always part of the consideration. So I mean, when you remove one rod outside the mixture, the resistance become, I mean, almost infinite, because I mean, it's the resistance of the it's the resistance of the air, you know, between the of the air between, like, wherever the other rod is placed, and the mixture, which is, as if I understand correctly, I mean, could be conceptualized as infinite, which means that the current, I mean, drops to zero. That's why, I mean, you don't see bubbles at all. But what we see here is actually in line with what we've seen before I've taken this sample, and like 40 or 50 minutes ago, that was almost the same, is in line with low current electrolysis. And since the voltage, I mean, presumably stayed the same, it just means that the resistance did not increase tremendously, but of course it's now, I mean, one explanation is that, I mean, now, I mean, it's a kind of a circuit that is like the one that we had with the normal electrolysis that was done in one container, but with higher resistance. Or another explanation would be that it's now less voltage. I would assume that it's incredibly difficult to hypothesize about resistance of a medium that is unknown to humans, because it's like hyperspace. Like, I mean, it's like another dimension. So how can we determine, I mean, what happened to, I mean, the resistance of it's not even, I don't know if it's even matter, like what's the resistance of this thing that, I mean, connects two portals? It's an open question. But another thing that might be more easy to conceptualize is that it's lower voltage because the size of the neurons that take place in the size of the neurons and the amount of neurons, the robots that take place in in the kind of the hyperspace connection of this circle does not allow for higher voltage, or higher difference in potential. And it should be reasonable to assume that if more neurons were part of this show, or bigger ones, this would allow higher voltage, and then more efficient electrolysis. Now, what can explain what you see here besides the fact that current is flow? There is a flow. Of electrical current. Through this kind of like hyperspace medium. Or in other way, how can we explain what we see here just using physics that are known to humans, if we want to be very skeptical? So first, I don't know. So, I would rarely get any comment on the matter. I should say that if what we see here is actually what I think it is and what I want it to be, which means a proof for the transfer of energy in this kind of like hyperspace medium, it probably will be easy to make it even more impressive, or in other words, to see more bubbles or more foam by tweaking the parameters as was described previously in this video. Which means that, probably if this is actually what I think it is, it's probably, I will probably be able to make it more lavish or more convincing by using different containers, different wiring, and also with the assistance of magnets, all of which will not, make it less impressive from the scientific point of view, because it will still be two different containers that are not connected by any conductive material. But it will make it, from experience, probably much more efficient, the electrolysis, and then we will see it in a very more demonstrable way. But until then, we can ask, what can explain it, without the theory of energy transfer? So it should be said that not much, according to my knowledge, but this is it's not a battery. It's a DC transformer. It is connected to the grid, and transformers are also capacitors. To my knowledge, every AC/DC transformer is also a capacitor. It's part of it. The engineering is a capacitor inside of it. Or in other words, a battery. Capacitor is a fancy physical name for what people call batteries. So even when you switch off the transformer, it should be said that some electrical energy is still stored in the transformer, even when you take it out of the socket. And potentially, this energy could be released maybe into the mixture, and maybe cause what we see here. I don't know. I don't believe this is true. But maybe. If I just present it because it's the only kind of explanation that I can have to what we actually see that is inside the boundaries of physics that are known to human. And I like to be, very skeptical. So maybe it's something like that. Maybe energy from the capacitor is released into the mixture. Doesn't make much sense because, first one, again, please correct me or enlighten me. If you have if you know anything on the matter, it doesn't make much sense to me because we see the bubbles are most probably, almost certainly, both like from theoretical perspective and from experience, is a product of separation of molecules. Again, most probably H2O2, even though it's not the only usage of electrolysis, it's probably the most basic and was used to isolate hydrogen, I think, originally. But it's not the only kind of thing that is done using electrolysis. There are all sorts of ways that, it's also used for ionization and galvanization that are two separate usages. But even like, I mean, the molecular separation is not always H2O to H2O2. This is like, I mean, the famous basic one, but others are used. So, and maybe that's what we see here. But I mean, I would suggest, I mean, the simple assumption is that what we see here is, you know, the classical H2O to H2O2, and these are the bubbles, actually. And I don't understand how can, I mean, any release of stored energy from a capacitor to a broken circle, in a broken circle, can explain the gradual separation of the molecules as is evident by the accumulation of the bubbles. But maybe it's possible. So, I mean, I'll stop now and immediately start a new video in which we will do three examination. I mean, the slide, I mean, the mixture, I mean, that is, we're taking not from, like, from near the rod, from not near the rod, and from the container.